Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Padamavyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Saji Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pavam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamatamsha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatadine Namamahavadaniyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gautashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanuste Devi Pranamami Hariti Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Paditahanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Namostate Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullar Tapatra Netre Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnam Prachvadito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapaniye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gītāmrita Dubhe Namaha. Welcome once again to the study of Bhakti-sastri and Gita-shastri. We are studying chapter 13 of Bhagavad-gita as it is. In the last class, we covered up to verse number 12. Huh? Arjuna has asked 6 questions in this chapter. Purusha, Prakriti, Jnana, Geya, Kshetra and Kshetragya. So far, Krishna has answered. What is Kshetra? Who is Kshetragya? What is Jnana? Now he will address the topic of Gyeya. Gyeya means object of knowledge, something that is to be known. Gyan is the subject. Gyeya is the object. So object of knowledge. In material subject matter, your subject may be something and the object may be something very different. Like to give you an example, you go to school and you are studying mathematics. So the object of studying mathematics is not mathematics. The object of studying mathematics is, I'll use this knowledge to become an engineer. I'll use this knowledge to become an accountant. I'll use this knowledge to become a CA. I'll use this knowledge for running a shop, running a business. That's the object. So you understand subject and object. Here again, Arjuna is asking, what is jnana, the subject, and what is gyeya, the object, something to be known. Okay, object of knowledge. Verses 13 to 19, they talk about this subject matter. ज्ञेयं यत्तत् प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वामृतमश्नुते अनादिमत्परं ब्रह्म न सत् तन्नासदुच्यते. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. The Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this world. So Krishna is saying, I'll explain to you knowable. Knowable means Keya. Knowing which you will taste the eternal. Okay. Let's look at the purport. Nagarajan, please read. You are not able to unmute yourself. Excuse. Okay, now you can.
Hare Krishna. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable. First the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can release the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the Jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of the Jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. Najayate mriyate va vipashit. Vipaschit. Kada Upanishad 1.2.18. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord has a super soul is also stated in Vedic literature, Svedeswadara Upanishad 6.16, to be Pradhana Kshetrajna Patir Guneshah, the chief knower of the body and the master of three modes of material nature. In the Smriti, it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harer Eva Nanyasvaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the supreme Brahman personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So there are two objects of knowledge, Gyeya Vastu. One is the individual soul and the other is the super soul. Fine. The individual soul is described in this verse which we just read now, 13.13. And the super soul is described in verses 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So as now you understand, Kshetrajna are how many? Two. Soul and super soul. Similarly, Gyeya are how many? Two. The soul and the super soul. Fine. So spiritual subject matter is something in which the knowledge and the object of knowledge appears to be same. Knowledge means to understand soul, super soul, and matter. And Gay is again soul and super soul. So you understand the soul to attain the soul. You're getting it. Not that you understand the soul to attain something different. In material science, you understand something to use it to get something else. But in spiritual subject matter, the subject of your study is the goal of your study. Understanding? Hmm? So, Gaya Vastu is the same as Jnana, non-different. Hmm? Okay. 13th, 14th. Now, the description of Paramatma begins. Sarvatah panipadam tat sarvato akshishiro mukham sarvatah shrutimaloke sarvamavidya tishtati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. As the sun exists, diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the Supersoul or Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities. Beginning from the first great teacher, Brahma, down to the small ants. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the Supersoul. Therefore, the Supersoul is all-pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he'll come to that stage. His thinking is contradictory. This means that the individual soul, having become conditioned by material nature, is not supreme. The supreme is different from the individual soul. The supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. In Bhagavad-gita, the Lord says that if anyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, he accepts it. If the Lord is a far distance away, how can he accept things? This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what anyone offers. That is his potency. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Goloke eva nivasati akhilatma bhutaha. Although he is always engaged in pastimes in his transcendental planet, he is all pervading. The individual soul cannot claim that he is all pervading. Therefore, this verse describes the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, not the individual soul. Prabhupada is simply clarifying that there are two objects of knowledge, one is soul, one is super soul, and they both are different from each other. Sarvendriya gunabhasam sarvendriya vivarchitam va asaktam sarva vrichaiva nirgunam guna bhoktricha. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses, without material senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. The qualities of super soul are being described. Gunagarai Gaurang Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat. The purport. The Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, does not have material senses like have, they have. Actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life, they are covered with the material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Shetashwara Upanishad 3.19 in the verse Apanipado Javana Grahita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hand which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him.
That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the super soul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. So this is also confirmed in the Bhagavad-gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of all, Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He has the he is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are the some of the symptoms of the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his hand, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially affected cannot understand the supreme personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
बहिरन्तश्च भूतानाम् अचरं चरमेव च सूक्ष्मत्वात् तद् अविज्ञेयं दूरस्थं चान्तिके च तत्. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Hmm? So you can see here, the Bhagavad Gita describes the contradicting qualities of the super soul: far, near, inside, outside, moving, non-moving, right? So this is to um explain that he is beyond the material. Therefore, the contradicting qualities are mentioned here. Fine. Ashoka Nature Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. In Vedic literature, we understand that Narayana, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present in both the spiritual and material worlds. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of Vedic literature. Asino duram vrajti shayano yati sarvataha. Katha Upanishad 1.2.21. And because he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he is enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for Supreme God can see him always without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 11.54 that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktaya tav anannaya shakkaya. Hare Krishna.
Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam iva cha sthitam bhutabhartri cha tajkeyam grashishnu prabhavishnu cha. Although the supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. So he is appearing to be divided, but he is never divided. Appears to be divided means what? Because the supersoul is present in every single living entity's heart, it may be understood by people that he expands himself or divides himself and then enters into every single person's heart. But it's not so. He is one who is present in everyone's heart in the same way, as he originally exists, right? So example is given of a sun, of the sun. The sun is one in the sky, but the same sun appears in all the different reflections of that sun. That reflection may be in different water bodies, that reflection may be in a mirror, that reflection may be in anything. It's the one sun which appears to be so many because of the reflections. Another example is given of water pots. If there is sun shining in the sky, in each water pot, you will see a reflection of the sun, right? And then that reflection will also emit light, isn't it? But though there are so many reflections of the sun in the water pots, sun is one. Similarly, the super soul is present in everyone's heart as a reflection. You can understand in that way. Not that it is divided. Okay. Rupanshi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as a super soul. Does this mean that he has become divided? No, actually he is one. The example is given of the sun. The sun at the meridian is situated in its place. But if one goes for 5,000 miles in all direction and asks, where is the sun? Everyone will say that it is shining on his head. In the Vedic literature, this example is given to show that although he is undivided, he is situated as if divided. Also, it is said in Vedic literature that one Vishnu is present everywhere by his omnipotence, just as the sun appears in many places to many persons. And the Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th chapter when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the warriors assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that in the form of time, he devours also. He is the annihilator, the killer of all. When there is creation, he develops all from their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he devours them. The Vedic hymns confirm the fact that he is the origin of all living entities and rest of all. After creation, everything rests in his omnipotence, and after annihilation, everything again returned to rest in him. These are the confirmations of Vedic hymns. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat parayanti abhisham visanti tad brahma tad vijinasva. Taittiriya Upanishad 3.1. Hare Krishna.
Verse. Jyotishamapi tad jyotish tamasaha paramuchyate jnanam geyam jnanagamyam hridhi sarvasya vishtitam. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge and is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Purport. Shamala Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects like the sun, moon, and stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom, there is no need of sun or moon because the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is there. In the material world, that Brahma Jyotir, the Lord's spiritual effulgence, is covered by the Mahatattva. The material elements, therefore, in this material world, we require the assistance of sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need of such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parashatat Sveta Swatara Upanishad 3.8. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far behind the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to that spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra, Sweta Swatara Upanishad 6.18 says, Tam ha devam atma buddhi prakasham mumuskur vai sharanam aham prapadye. One must surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Tam eva vidvati mrityum eti. One only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. Sweta Swatara Upanishad 3.8. He is situated in everyone's heart. As the Supreme Controller, the Supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere. And this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the super soul. Must be admitted one's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Shweta Swatara Upanishad 3.17. Sarvasya Prabhum Ishanam Sarvasya Sharanam Brahat. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Super Soul, is the Prabhu, the master of all living entities. Therefore, he is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Super Soul and the individual soul are always different. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, one small clarification can I?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, in first paragraph it is there, because sun is always shining with the rays, and because earth is revolving around the sun, so there is day and night. And in spiritual world, the Brahman effulgence is always there. Is there any phenomena like this that they are day and night, or only day is there? Because Brahman effulgence is always there, no, continuously. Here, because the earth revolves around the sun, part of it gets shadowed and day and night come. Is there any phenomena there?
In the spiritual abodes, you are asking?
Yes, Prabhuji. Because Brahman effulgence is always there, 24 hours.
It's a good question. The Brahman effulgence is coming from the body of Supreme Lord Krishna, right?
Yes,
isn't it?
yes,
Now I have a similar question to ask to you. Sun is giving out light, right?
yes.
So how close can you be to the sun? You can't be very close to the sun, no?
No,
No. Krishna is also giving out light, so much light.
yes,
Brahma Jyoti is Krishna's effulgence.
yeah.
But then the Gopas and Gopis, they're embracing Krishna, they are with Krishna. Then they should also get blinded by the light of Krishna, no?
But we were taking that though they are in Vrindavan, Vrindavan is in the material world, but not that Golok Vrindavan.
In Golok Vrindavan, when they come close to Krishna, do they close their eyes? Because Krishna is so bright, so much
No, they,
shine.
no,
No, right?
I don't think that will be there.
So that means though Krishna is exuding so much of effulgence, that effulgence is not blinding them, no?
Yeah.
Right? Which means the nature of materials light and the nature of spiritual light or effulgence is different. Correct?
Right.
Isn't it? Hmm. So though there is Brahman effulgence everywhere, the nature of that effulgence is not like the sun. Right? So in eternal spiritual abode, if for manifesting Krishna Leela, some pastime of Krishna, there has to be absence of light or there has to be some darkness, the darkness can also be present.
Darkness can also be
Present.
okay.
For Krishna.
Otherwise, how will they sleep at night like we do it here?
Yeah. Or they don't even have to sleep actually, because that's not a necessity for them. Just like there is no hunger in spiritual world, there is no fatigue in spiritual world. There is no need to sleep there. But as a matter of pastime, there will be day also and there will be night also. There will be sun in the sky also, there will be moon in the sky also.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that effulgence is not like the material effulgence. Hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Fine. So for Krishna Leela, everything is possible. Any other question?
So it mentions about Krishna's hands and legs are everywhere. So
Yes.
how do we understand that? Is it, I mean, counting each of our hands and legs as hands and legs of Krishna,
Yes,
or it's
Prabhupada explains in both the ways.
okay?
He is all pervading. Because he's all pervading, he's everywhere. Since he's everywhere, his hands and legs are also everywhere. That is one way of explaining. The other way of explaining is our hands are also his hands. Our legs are also his legs. In what sense? All the senses that we have come from him. So our senses are his senses. Which means what? The super soul can see through my eyes. The super soul can also hear through my ears. Because this eye is a part of his eye, or the ability to see in this eye is coming from him. So Prabhupada explained both the ways. Since all our senses are coming from him, they are his senses also. And because he's everywhere, his eyes and hands and legs are also everywhere. So he explains it both the ways.
Thank you.
Hmm. Last verse in this section. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam gyeyam choktam samasatah mad bhakta etad vigyaya mad bhava yupapadyate Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So, what has been described? Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnana, and Gyeya. These four subject matters have been summarily described by Krishna. Only devotees can understand it thoroughly and attain to Krishna's nature. Uma Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Combine these are called Vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The Munis say that at the ultimate stage these three items become one, but the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge means understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activity and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7, beginning from Mahabhutani and continuing through Chetana Dhriti, analyze the material elements and certain manifestation of the symptoms of life. These combine to form the body or the field of activities. And verses 8 through 12 from Amanitvam through Tadva Jnanata Darsanam describes the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the super soul. Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anandi, Mat Param, and continuing through Riddhi Sarvasya Vishtitam, describes the soul and the Supreme Lord or the super soul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the super soul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So for these devotees, Bhagavad-gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad-gita and derive the desired result. Hare Krishna. Thank you for
Okay. So, who can understand all this? Prabhupada, in the purport, he says, Mad Bhaktaha. Can understand this, my devotee, right? The science of knowledge is explained here in the purport. What is that science? Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the super soul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. It means others also try to understand, but they don't understand clearly. So for these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the supreme law. Scriptures, sometimes we think just the study of scriptures is sufficient. That's not so. Because though the scriptures tell us about the nature of soul and super soul, that knowledge is enough, not enough to realize the soul and the super soul. The scriptures are like pointers or maps, you know. Now, once you have the map, it's not that you have reached the destination. The map will only show the direction. The destination is reached when you walk on the path and then reach the destination. Like if I want to go from Mumbai to Delhi, then definitely there will be a book which talks about Delhi and describes you Delhi and also shows you the direction to Delhi. Reading that book will help me know about Delhi, but I have not reached Delhi by reading that book. Then I have to take the path and then go to Delhi, right? Similarly, in scriptures, we may study about soul, super soul, their nature, their qualities, but knowing them is not that you have realized them or you have reached them. Why the qualities are described in the scriptures? Because if you don't know the qualities of the soul and super soul, if you have attained the soul or the super soul realization, how would you know that you have realized the soul or the super soul? So the qualities are given. It's like the pointer, the map. However, the goal has to be attained, right? That's why the subject of knowledge and the object of knowledge. Subject and object, two different things, you know. For example, soul. When we discuss about soul, Bhagavad-gita says, "न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन्नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजः नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे." This is a verse 2.20 talking about the soul. That's the subject. What is the soul like? Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya aja nitya shashvato yam purana. That is the soul. That is the subject. It's like a pointer giving you direction. Now, how to come to that realization? How to attain that realization? So that is the process of knowing, right? The process of knowing. And that is explained here as bhakti, by devotional service.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Can I also? Is it that only devotee can understand soul? Or?
Prabhupada writes, unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these items clearly, which means a pure devotee will understand it perfectly. One who is not so pure will understand it imperfectly or incompletely.
Yes.
So someone who is not a devotee may also know about the soul, but the understanding is not complete or not clear, not perfect.
Yeah.
A devotee can understand it perfectly. And it's very easy to understand this. You go to YouTube and you'll get to hear from so many spiritual teachers who also might be having some mystic powers because they are yogis or whatever. Let them talk about the soul. They cannot explain the science of soul as clearly as Prabhupada can. Even if they've read Bhagavad-gita, they cannot. That clarity is not there. But Srila Prabhupada has that clarity, right? So that clarity comes from the purity or the level of purity of heart. Okay, next verse. So it's the next section, verses 20 to 26. Prakriti, Purusha, and their union. How do they get united? How does the soul come in contact with matter? Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi Anadi Ubhavapi Vikarangscha Gunangshaiva Vidhi Prakriti Sambhavan. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhi Anadi Ubhavapi. They're beginningless. Vikarangsha Gunangshaiva. Their transformations and the modes of nature are products of material nature. So we'll look at that. Vikaran here refers to the transformation of the body and the senses. And Gunan refers to the three modes of nature, which refers to happiness and distress. Purport. Are you able to? Devesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandavat. By the knowledge given in this chapter, one can understand the body, the field of activities, and the knowers of the body, both the individual soul and the super soul. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha, or the living entity. He is one knower and the other is the super soul. Of course, it is to be understood that both the super soul and the individual entity are different manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is in the category of his energy, and the super soul is in the category of his personal expansion. Both material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so all other living entities. But the living entities are of the superior energy. Both the living entities and the material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it was manifested by the agency of the Mahatattva. Similarly, the living entities are also in him, and because they are conditioned, they are averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entity is originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. But due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within material nature. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come in contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by this material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence. But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you.
So here, what is said? That the relationship between the jiva and the prakriti is mm, is anadim, beginningless. Now, what is the meaning of that beginningless? Anadi means without beginning in time, or eternal, or from before creation. No. Sometimes people think Anadi means it never happened. Anadi does not mean it never happened. Anadi also means it happened in a space where there is no time, or where time does not exist. So it's called Anadi. Fine.
Prabhuji explain this without beginning in time. What does this mean?
Without beginning in time means the day, the moment at which the material creation begins. That is the beginning of time.
It means before the time was there, before that. So it is Anadi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can say before the calculation of time started.
Okay, fine.
Because time will start ticking. The calculation will start happening from the moment the Brahmand is created. Before that, there is no record of time. Right? So that's
when it says time is eternal, means time also is when the entire cosmos they get unmanifested at the time of pralaya. So time is there. Time is always there. Again, the time counts when the cosmos starts, when regeneration is there. Time is always there. Time is eternal. But
time
once
is eternal.
Brahma's 100 years are over and there is pralaya and annihilation of everything,
Then also there is
manifestation is there. So counting of time will start again afresh or time continues?
Afresh.
Okay, thank you.
Because the time which you are calculating is the record of within this Brahman, no?
Yes, Prabhu.
It's not outside the Brahman.
Yes.
That's why whatever is happening outside that scope is called Anadi, without beginning. So Jiva has a source in Ishwar, Prakriti also has a source in Ishwar, and the relationship is also without beginning. Association is also without beginning. That's why it's called Anadi. And why that association is there? Of the Jiva with Prakriti.
Because when both are anadis and they continue to meet from the very beginning, so naturally both will be, and their relationship also will be anadi. No?
Why that relationship is there?
Because he is entangled in the modes of material nature.
Entanglement in modes of material nature has not yet started. Why that association is there?
Is it because of selfish desires?
Yeah, because of the Jiva's desire to lord over Prakriti. So that association is there. Right. Next verse. कार्य कारण कर्तृत्वे हेतुः प्रकृतिर उच्यते पुरुषः सुख दुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतुरुच्यते. कार्य कारण कर्तृत्वे हेतुः प्रकृतिर उच्यते. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects. But Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam Bhoktritve Heturuchyate. Whereas a living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So, when you go to the previous verse, there were two words. Vikarangscha Gunangscha. Vikar means the transformation in the body. The cause of that transformation is material nature. But Gunangs refers to happiness and distress. The cause of that happiness and distress is not material nature. The cause of that happiness and distress is the living entity's bhoktritve mentality. Purport. Paramgati Prabhu.
The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 species, 84 lakh different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he's put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire of to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure. But in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures of the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total minus body and instrument, the sum total body and instrument senses is offered by material nature. And as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desire and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. One placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control. Okay. He comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 as follows. Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that is always accompanies the individual soul, and in all circumstances is present as the super soul or Paramatma.
So, though the arrangement of happiness and distress is made by the material nature, but the actual cause of that happiness or distress is the jiva's independent desire to lord over the material nature. Bhoktritve hetu ruchyate. The cause is the jiva, though the arrangement is made by the material nature. Like this example is there. The car is inanimate. When a man enters into the car who is animate, the car it also gets animated. And similarly, Prakriti is inanimate. Prakriti cannot go through any transformation. But when the jiva enters, then there is transformation, happiness, distress, whatever. And that is caused by jiva's independent desire to lord over material nature. So the jiva is the main cause of that happiness and distress. Arrangement is made by the Prakriti. Why jiva comes in contact with Prakriti? Purusha Prakriti sthohi bhungte Prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sad asad yoni janmashu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. Karanam gunasangasya sad asad yoni janmashu. Prabhupada explains. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entity transmigrates from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, sometimes as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him transfer from one body to another because he has material desire since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example here is here. Arjuna is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as it reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. So Prabhupada has explained the cause as well as the remedy in the purport of how to becoming free from the entanglement. The cause is desire to enjoy, and the way or the means to become free from that bondage or entanglement is to learn of one's association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the cause of bondage as well as the means to liberation are both explained in the purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Babuji, may I ask one question?
Go.
Babuji, here it is mentioned that how is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to the association of the different modes of nature. So, so when some living being is just coming down from the spiritual world, in that scenario, he is not associated with the material modes of nature, right? So, in that case, how it will be? I mean, what was the reason for him to?
What was the reason for the living entity to come to material world?
Yes, Babuji.
Again, it's a question on how the jiva made that first fall or contact in material nature. So, what to say? The only answer which is given is desire.
Selfish desire.
Nothing else is explained. Desire.
And due to contact of this material modes, it's becoming more entangled, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm. Any other question?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, when we say desires, so these desires are sprouting in the spiritual world itself, because for the first time when the soul is taking birth in material nature, that time he has a clean slate, right? I mean, the first time, suppose the soul is coming down, so the desires come in the spiritual world itself for it to come down to the material nature. Just wanted to understand that.
First of all, you should know this thing, that the ability to desire is in the jiva as a nature of the jiva, right? Second thing is, if we do accept that the jiva has come from the spiritual world, if you do accept that understanding, then we should know that the jiva will never have such a gross desire that let me go to material nature and exploit material nature. It's never going to be that gross. I'm like, as a human being, do you ever desire that next life I'll become a dog or a stool-eating hog? No, right? It's never that gross.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
But then whoever is in a dog's body now is in a dog's body because of some of that entity's desires or karma when that entity was in a human body, right or wrong?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So the thing is, when we talk about the soul's independent desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, it is not that gross in the beginning. Then I want to go to material world, I want to become so and so. It is a very, 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 you can say, it starts with a very, very, very minute, deviation from one's nature to serve Krishna. Okay. So it's not that gross. Like even when Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains, he says in one place that every jiva who came to this material world was once upon a time Brahman. Why did he develop the desire to be Brahma? Not because he wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. He just wanted to serve Krishna, but in a different way. He wanted to serve Krishna in a different way. But because he developed that desire to serve, which required dealing with material energy of Krishna, he had to become Brahma. And once he became Brahma, then due to contact with material nature, he slipped down further and further and further and further and further and further, and then became a normal, ordinary living entity condition. So, you getting?
Oh, yeah. So that means, Prabhuji, there are levels of falling in the spiritual world as well before it actually comes into material nature, by this understanding.
No, not their levels of falling, but you can say at our level of consciousness at which we exist now, when the initial deviation of the jiva happens from the original nature to serve Krishna, that deviation is very minute. It's not as gross and as visible as it is now in our case.
Yeah.
You're getting it? It is very sukshma, very subtle, very, very subtle. So that sukshma deviation, slight deviation, it then increases and increases as the association with the three modes increases.
Okay.
You getting it?
Yes. Prabhuji, that means the three modes, but the three modes are only in the material nature, right? Three modes don't exist in the spiritual place where, like, you're saying about the
they don't exist there. But then if you already have developed a slight deviation in your mind, uh, then it won't take much time to slip from spiritual to material.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Got it, Babuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, mind is material thing, no, Prabhu. In spiritual, it won't be there. Mind is material energy, no, Prabhu. It won't be there in spiritual energy.
No, mind is material, true, but there is spiritual mind also.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In terms of the transmigration of the jiva into various species, that fall down, is it systematic or can we jump from anywhere to anywhere in the 8.4 million species?
Well, you see, when you say about systematic fall or systematic movement, it all depends on how, in what sense Krishna judges or evaluates your deviation, no?
Okay.
Isn't it? That's why for every individual, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the exact reason why an individual jiva has fallen can only be known to that jiva after that jiva returns to the spiritual world. Because it cannot be the same for every jiva. There is a generalized thing and there is a specific thing. The generalized thing is what? Independent desire to enjoy. Now, how did it specifically happen in a particular case? You don't know, or I don't know. Only Krishna knows. Right?
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
So there is a general reason, independent desire. Specific reason, why it happened, when it happened, from where it happened, how many steps you took to come to the human form of life. That only Krishna would know. Only Krishna would know. Isn't it? Only Krishna would know. Someone who has come from Krishna Leela, sent for a purpose, that also only Krishna would know. Someone is a conditioned soul, that also only Krishna would know. Only Krishna would know that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hmm.
Prabhuji, this means that there is another chance for us if we reach in the Krishna lok, we can come again on this earth. Means this cycle keeps on going.
No, that chance is not there because Krishna has assured in Bhagavad-gita, once you go back, you don't return. Once you go back, you don't return. That Krishna has explained in Bhagavad-gita.
Okay.
Prabhuji, like we have heard many times during Rath Yatra, the one who goes to the Puri Dham and pull the Ratha during Rath Yatra, they never take birth again in this material world. But if we have desires, material desires, what about them, Prabhuji? Like, if we have desires, but still we are going and taking darshan and then pulling the Ratha with faith, so what happens to that jiva? Like,
Will he take birth again, or like as it is said that they will not take birth again? It is confusing.
We'll study in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When scriptures make such statements, if you once eat Mahaprasadam, you'll never take birth again. Once you pull the Rath Yatra, you'll never take birth again. We should know that is to inspire us so that we engage in that activity more and more again and again. Right? That is to inspire. But that doesn't mean, okay, once I do, enough. Now I'm going back to God. That's not the purpose with which that statement is made.
Yeah.
That is not the purpose.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Before you mentioned there is a spiritual mind, what does it mean? Our mind will become spiritual, or there is another spiritual mind? Can you explain that?
Mataji, you have a material body now?
Yes.
Which is made of Panch Mahabhut?
Yes.
So if you go to spiritual world, will this material body become spiritual body?
No, there is another spiritual body.
Similarly, there is another spiritual mind.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. We move on. So here it is explained. Karanam guna sangasya, the jiva is entrapped because of association. Why is jiva situated in Prakriti? Due to his impression of beginningless karma, right? And the jiva acts as the agent. That imprint of karma is there. So because of that, the jiva takes birth again and again and again and again. And why? Since time immemorial. So this verse is there from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna bhuli se ji anadi bahir mukha ateva maya tare deya sansara dukha. And because the disease is long time old, therefore the cure is also taking time. When the disease is chronic, the cure also takes quite some time to bring the disease back to healthy condition. So similarly, because the jiva's attachment or association with material nature is quite long, therefore it takes good amount of time, practice, and of course mercy of Krishna and devotees to come back to normal healthy condition. It takes time. It's a time-taking process. The purification of the jiva. So from here, what we understand, who is doing the jiva or the prakriti? So let's do an exercise here. Please read these verses and answer these 4 questions. Are you done?
Yes, Prabhu, we are done.
Prabhuji, can I?
Everyone is done? So what's the answer to first question? What do you conclude by reading these verses?
Prabhuji, it uh, directly implies that the Prakriti is an influencer. It is not the actually doer. It's just an influencer, and we get influenced by its uh, reactions.
What else? What do you conclude by these verses?
Prabhuji, that all the karma that the jiva does is under the modes of material nature, and these modes force the jiva to act in a particular way. So the three modes of material nature is the doer.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hmm.
I understood like we are not the doer. Influence of false ego. We think that we are the doer of activities, but actual the doer of the material nature, the three modes of material nature. So these verses clearly mentions that the doer of activities is the three modes of material nature. If that three modes of material nature knows that Supreme Lord, but who is the transcendental, the all these three modes can attain that spiritual nature.
Okay. What do you conclude by reading these verses? That Prakriti is the doer. In short?
Yes.
But second question. Since the Prakriti is unconscious element, how is it the doer?
There can be two things. Once it is the energy of the Lord. So Lord empowers the energy to do because natural calamities also come. So without anything, the Prakriti does. Second is, it says when the Prakriti comes in contact with the superior energy, and this word functions because of the superior energy, that is Jivas. So when Prakriti comes in contact with the Jivas, it starts acting. These two reasons I could think of.
So the Prakriti starts acting, but then who instigated the Prakriti to act?
When they exploit the resources and
The car is driving or the driver is driving?
Driver is driving.
So
It's
who is
our
the driver?
desire which instigated the Prakriti.
The Supreme Personality of God. Prabhuji, the unconscious, but when it comes in contact with the conscious energy, which is the jiva, then it acts as if it is conscious. So hence it acts as the doer.
Yeah,
So
but then,
Prakriti is
so
the
it acts as the doer.
yeah,
However, who made the Prakriti to act in such a way?
the jiva under the
Jiva, our
three
desire,
modes of
our desires,
material
So
nature.
who is the actual doer?
the jiva.
No, material energy. Nature.
Material nature is the doer.
Prakriti. Yeah.
Prakriti is the doer.
Prabhuji,
So
both.
the actual doer is the Jiva. These verses are to show the prominence of the functioning of the Prakriti. It's just like, to give you an example.
Oh, okay.
A man is carrying an object, but the man is carrying the object using his hand, right? A person is carrying an object using his hand. So we may say the hand is carrying the object, but actually it is whose hand? That person's hand. Similarly, the jiva accomplishes everything using Prakriti. But the scriptures say Prakriti accomplishes. Why? To show the prominence of Prakriti. Right. But actually it is the jiva who is the doer in true sense. If the jiva does not instigate the Prakriti will not do anything. It's the jiva, the desire, the jiva's desire. And then Prakriti does. Right? So the scripture has to also describe the functioning of the Prakriti, no? Therefore, the scripture explains us in this way. The jiva does nothing. Because the jiva does not do anything on the execution platform. That is done by Prakriti. But that seed is put by the jiva only. That initial spark. And therefore, the jiva is the actual doer in that sense. Right? Like, for example, when I say, I'm carrying a mobile phone, it is not me who is carrying the mobile phone. It's my hand which is carrying the mobile phone. But can the hand carry the mobile phone without me actually allowing my hand to carry it? No. So I say, I am carrying the mobile phone. Similarly, the jiva is the doer. But when I have to explain the functioning of the hand, so I'll say, it's not you who is carrying the phone, it's actually your hand carrying the phone. Similarly, the scriptures say, it's not you who are doing, Prakriti is doing. But Prakriti is doing why? Because I am inspiring Prakriti. My desires are inspiring Prakriti to do. Okay. Fine. So
But Pro 3.27, it clearly mentions that due to false ego, he thinks I am the doer.
Yeah, that
And
due to false ego, he thinks I'm the doer. So there, the understanding which we have to withdraw from this verse and the verses which are given in this chapter and in the later chapters is that the jiva is in big time illusion if the jiva thinks I am the only doer.
okay.
And that's a conditioned jiva who thinks I am the only doer. Right? But a jiva in knowledge will know super soul is also a doer. I am also a doer. Prakriti is also a doer. Super soul is the doer because he sanctions. If he doesn't sanction, I cannot do anything. Prakriti is the doer because it facilitates. If Prakriti does not facilitate, I can't do anything. And I am the doer because it's me who is desiring. Right? So to remove the jiva from this illusion that you are the supreme doer, verse 3.27 exists.
Yes, because material nature is also under the control of the Supreme Lord.
Yes.
Basically,
therefore, it is to crush the pride of people who are very proud. No, I have done, right? I have done everything. That's what the conditions whole thing. So, in order to crush that pride, you think you are the doer. So, 3.27.
thank you.
Right? And Krishna is speaking that verse in what context? Karma yoga. So he's kind of telling Arjuna, don't be so much in doership mentality. Come out of it. Right? Like, for example, sometimes if you have a proud son and he says, Papa, what do you know? I am doing everything. Then you will shut the mouth of the child and say, you are doing nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that he's doing nothing. But just to shut his mouth, you are doing nothing. Similarly, 3.27, shut the mouth. You are not the doer. Right?
Here is another thing, Prabhuji. When Jiva is desiring and the material nature is facilitating, so from where the capability is coming to material nature? So that is also it we consider, right? If we think in that way, that in that case, Mahat Tattva is facilitating material nature, and therefore that activity is getting executed.
Yes. So you are saying this point in regards to what? How Jiva is not the only doer?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, correct. Yes. If the Prakriti does not facilitate, the Jiva cannot do. So though the Jiva is not the only doer, but the Jiva is the only one responsible.
Yes, sir.
Right. Prakriti is not responsible, Super Soul not responsible. Jiva alone is responsible.
It is neutral.
I think we'll stop here because in the time we are left with, I cannot complete this chapter. We have 12 more verses to do. I thought I would be able to complete it today, but I can't. So we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow. The same chapter. Any other question or comment?
Prabhuji, in the previous verse only, there was a mention like hearing process. To submit on hearing process will help us a lot to overcome this conditioning. So hearing means simply hearing the topics of Krishna, or further stages are also included in that.
Can you please repeat, Prabhu?
Just in previous purport only, Prabhupada mentioned that hearing from authorized source is the only remedies. Just like Prabhupada was giving the example of Arjuna. He accepted from hearing from Krishna. So that can only remove the contamination that we have to lord it over this material nature. So I was thinking this hearing means simply hearing without other aspects or other stages of the things, or we have to go through those things also. Like
what are the other aspects?
Like one of your videos only I have heard that there is, after hearing, we have to think on those aspects and we have to act also. Smaranam nididhashanam, I think that was the Shravanam.
Look, that applies to hearing from any source. Even if you're hearing from a pure devotee of Krishna, if you just keep on hearing and you don't act on their instruction, how is it going to help you anyway?
Let's say considering the pastimes of Lords. So how we can hear that Smaran?
But then when an acharya is talking, is the acharya only talking on pastimes of Krishna?
No, I'm just thinking the aspect of pastimes.
No, it's not like that. Not every single instruction or every statement of the scripture is meant for personal application.
Okay.
Right? And the personal application can come in various ways. When you are hearing the pastime of Krishna, there are lessons from those pastimes also. So those lessons can be applied in one's life. Like, for example, you are hearing Krishna breaking the pot, the butter pot. So in Damodar Leela. So not everything that is being done there is for personal application or spoken there for personal application. But then there is a lesson at the end. The two fingers represent mercy and endeavor. So then you have a lesson to apply. And it also depends at what level of devotion you are. The Damodar Leela, in the Damodar Leela, there is a very beautiful description of Mother Yashoda, how she dresses, and all that. So it is said that those who are on the platform of Raga and they're doing Raga Nuga Bhakti and they want to develop a mood similar to Mother Yashoda's mood. So they should always meditate on this form of Mother Yashoda churning the butter. To meditate on that form, they have to again and again remember those verses which are describing Mother Yashoda churning the butter from Srimad Bhagavatam. So, everything that is there, it has application at different levels for different level of devotees.
Yes.
Now there are descriptions in scriptures, detailed descriptions about the Kunja of Lalita Sakhi, the Kunja of Vishakha. At our level, we just hear it. But someone who is practicing Raga Bhakti, that description might be an object of meditation for that devotee.
Yes.
Understand?
Yes.
So contemplation and application is at different levels for different devotees. Everything is, that's all.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hmm.
Prabhuji, till the slokas we have read, can you come up with a summary like what we have understood out of it?
Summary, very simple, 6 questions of Arjuna. Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnana, Geya, Purusha, Prakriti. What is Kshetra? The body. Who is Kshetragya? The soul and super soul. Some verses talk in detail about the body, the 24 elements, the transformations in the body. And then what is Jnana? To know these 3 subject matters and the process of Jnana given in verses 8 to 12, cultivation of qualities. After that, who is Geya? The object of knowledge, soul and super soul. Soul described in verse 13, super soul described in verses 14 to 19. Then next topic, Purusha Prakriti and how they come in contact with each other, explained in verses, what we are reading now. That is the gist. In summary, that's what this chapter is talking about.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, see, some concepts are not clear, like how we descend on this earth, or
Huh?
how we descend on this earth. Like, if these things are not clear in our mind, like, for if it take to me, then still we love to do the path which we are following. Then we will come into the people who follow the devotional path just out of emotion. Means that will be a wrong thing. Is my question clear? Like
No.
we started reading the scriptures, Bhagavad-gita, so that our belief on this path got strengthened up. But such topics that how the soul came on this earth, or ye jo the thing I asked you, okay, is there any uh, probability that we will come again on this earth, etc. Some things are not getting clear when these topics, like, these are very deep topics. I am not able to understand it this first go. I am just thinking that maybe next time I'll read Gita ji, the things will become more clearer. So in that sense, uh, will my following this path come into an emotional follower? You're getting
Okay,
my
so your
question?
question is, we are studying the scriptures to make our understanding clear of the philosophy. But then when some difficult topic comes, your understanding does not become clear.
Yes.
There's just some cloudiness in understanding. So if you still follow the path, then will you be considered an sentimental follower?
Yes,
That's what
yes, 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 yes.
No, it's see, we cannot understand the process of Krishna consciousness fully right from day one, no? But how much ever you understand, that much you follow, then you are not a sentimental follower. Sentimental follower means you don't understand anything at all, and you're simply following without understanding anything. That is sentimental. It's not that I don't understand perfectly and still I am following, I'm sentimental. Because on day one, your understanding can never be perfect. Whatever you understand little bit, with that you follow. Then your understanding grows, and then you follow with that better understanding. So sentimental follower means you have no understanding, or your understanding is totally wrong, or you don't even care about your understanding. You just follow. That is sentimental. So in our case, we may not be sentimental. We may be having incomplete understanding. And that's okay. You don't understand everything in the beginning.
Okay, Prabhuji, then just to console myself, I can connect with that Mahaprabhu has told in that story that my Guru Maharaj has given me Mahamantra, thinking that I am a fool, I can understand the things. So that can we relate with that? Just to feel better.
No, no problem. But
Thank
why you want to feel better? Here, no one is understanding.
प्रभु जी डर लगता है कई बार ना कि मतलब समझ ही नहीं आ रहा मतलब क्यों नहीं आ रहा
But
लाइक
then the point is here, no one is understanding. So why you want to feel better? Everyone
Mataji,
is.
it happens with everybody. We are also not understanding. Even on the second or third time, we are not able to understand.
Yeah, he's doing for the third time. Still is not understanding. Right? So why you want to feel better? I mean, it's okay. It's fine if you don't understand.
okay. Thank you.
Even after doing for the second time, our answers go wrong. So that's okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, would you be able to explain beginningless karma or impression
Beginningless.
of karma? Yeah, I don't
Beginningless.
understand it. Yeah.
Beginningless means Beginningless means here that it did not happen within the purview of material time.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Prabhu.
Like, to give you a very simple explanation, we know time is eternal, right? Which means time exists forever, correct? But that time is tracked from at a particular time, isn't it?
At the
When it,
beginning of creation.
yeah, when the universe started coming out from the pore of Mahavishnu, if I take that as the beginning of time, so I'll say this is 0 second, right?
Okay.
But does it mean before that 0 second time did not exist?
No, it exists eternally in the spiritual world.
It existed, but there was no record of it. There was no count of it. There was no track of it. Right? Now, if anything happened before that 0 second, what will you call that as? Beginningless,
Okay.
anadi,
Thank you, Prabhu.
right? But it doesn't mean that it did not happen. It happened, but it happened outside the scope of
The record
counting
of
time.
time.
The record of time. That's why it's called anadi.
Okay.
Right? That's why, some people get confused. They think anadi means it never happened. Beginningless means it never happened. Or it's like that since the beginning. But it's not like that. It did happen, but it happened outside the record of time. Like, to give you an example, we know the pastime of the fall of Jay and Vijay, or the coming down of Jay and Vijay from Vaikuntha to material
Yes,
planet.
Prabhu.
If someone asks, when did it happen? There's no record of time because it happened in a place where no one is keeping time.
In Vaikuntha.
Right? Isn't it? But so when it happened there, we cannot say. But once they landed on the, on whichever planet they landed in, then we can say this happened at that time.
Okay.
Isn't it? But when did it happen, we can't say. But when they came to planet Earth, or whichever planet, material planet, we can say it happened at this time. Isn't it?
So the Kumaras traveled outside of time. The four Kumaras traveled outside
Four
of time for
Kumaras,
that.
yes.
Awesome.
The four Kumaras travel outside the purview of material time. Yes.
Okay.
They went into a zone which was outside time. And they could do that. Why? Liberated souls. Not controlled by time and space. Any other question? See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Those who are going to give exam now, stay back. whoever is writing the CBA or giving the shloka exam, you can stay back at 4 p.m. And those who are done with the exam,